Hey, guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I never thought I'd have a sworn enemy, especially not at my fairly mundane office job. But that all changed when Karen got hired as our new in-house counsel. From day one, she carried herself like she owned the place, acting all high and mighty just because she had a law degree. The first time we met, I tried being friendly and introduced myself. Her response? A curt nod and an uppity charmed before walking away. Well, excuse me for trying to be collegial. Still, I brushed it off as her just having a bad first day. Oh, how wrong I was. Over the next few weeks, Karen constantly complained about having to work in our drab office rather than some fancy law firm. She acted like making copies and drafting basic contracts was beneath someone of her caliber. Give me a break, lady. We all have to start somewhere. But the absolute worst was how condescending she was anytime I asked a work-related question. I swear her eyes would roll so far back in her skull I thought they'd get stuck. Things escalated when I accidentally missed a deadline for some compliance forms. It was a simple oversight on my part, and I owned up to it fully. But Karen saw it as an opportunity to flex her legal expertise and dramatically announced she'd handle the problem herself so it wouldn't happen again. She then proceeded to gather the entire office for an absurd training seminar on proper protocols and procedures. Never mind that most employees had been working there far longer than her. We just smiled and nodded through the nonsense. Well, everyone except me. When she specifically called me out as an example of what not to do, I finally snapped. Not my finest moment, but I bluntly told her that mistakes happen, and her little power trip wasn't helping anyone. You could hear a pin drop after my outburst. Karen's face turned beet red, and I swear there was steam coming out of her ears. I braced myself for a verbal lashing, but she simply adjourned her seminar and slinked away silently. I figured that was the end of it. Again, I was wrong. The next week, I got called into my boss's office. Karen had filed a formal complaint accusing me of unprofessional conduct for snapping at her during the training fiasco. She recommended I undergo an extensive probationary period to remedy my behavioral issues. I was fuming but managed to calmly lay out my side and explain that she'd been targeting me from day one. Thankfully, my boss saw through her nonsense. I thought Karen would finally leave me be after that. Nope. Her next scheme was convincing the big bosses that my whole department was inefficient and needed restructuring. And by restructuring, she meant eliminating our jobs so she could bring in her lawyer buddies. She kept dropping by with random assessments trying to dig up any minor mistake to use against us. I made sure to button up every single report and submit every form days in advance just to spite her. When her little investigation turned up zilch, she got even more determined. Karen pored over company policies, hunting for loopholes to manipulate. She kept proposing pointless amendments like limiting our internet usage or banning personal phone calls. It was blatantly obvious she just wanted to trip us all up and have an excuse for punishment. But her suggestions were so absurd the bosses dismissed them outright. After months of dealing with her harassment, I finally decided enough was enough. It was time to take matters into my own hands. I casually asked around the office about getting access to the personnel files, feigning innocent curiosity. Once I got the 411, I waited for the perfect opportunity. The next time Karen took one of her notorious 2-hour lunch meetings, I snuck into the file room and dug up her folder. After making copies of any useful tidbits, I slid the folder right back where I found it. Karen was none the wiser. Armed with my newly acquired intel, I devised the perfect plan to take Karen down. Turns out she conveniently neglected to disclose some pretty unsavory details about her past employers on her resume. Details that I anonymously disclosed to the higher-ups. Once the big bosses caught wind of Karen's exaggerations and outright lies on her application, an official investigation was launched. The look on Karen's face when HR hauled her into the conference room for questioning was absolutely priceless. As the inquiry unfolded, more skeletons came tumbling out of her closet, like the small law firm that let her go for breaching client confidentiality, and the legal department she left because of numerous client complaints. One by one, the big bosses began to connect the dots on just who they had hired. In a desperate attempt to save face, Karen tried throwing me under the bus. She accused me of hacking her personnel file and making false claims because I had a personal vendetta. Unfortunately for her, I had prepared for this possibility. I provided irrefutable evidence that everything disclosed was 100% factual. By the end, Karen's only option was surrender. The investigation resulted in her being unceremoniously terminated. As she cleared out her desk, Karen shot me a look so sharp it could cut glass. But I didn't mind one bit. I simply smiled and gave a cheerful wave goodbye. She stormed out in disgrace, knowing her legal career was ruined. And just like that, my Karen problem was solved. I went back to my daily grind in a workplace free of her harassment and lies. Sometimes a little petty revenge really pays off in the end. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My friend and I rode our bikes into town. There were only a few designated areas for bikes. A car was parked in the middle of the clearly marked bike bay, only 2 spaces available, one at the front, one at the back. We put our bikes in those 2 spaces. On the way to the shop, we spotted a traffic warden, told her about the car. She put a ticket on it. 10 minutes later, we returned to our bikes. The driver is waiting by her car. She starts yelling at us about how petty we were for blocking her in. We ignore her. I say to my friend, "I'm thirsty, I need a coffee." As we're talking, she's still ranting. Traffic warden #2 writes her a ticket. We go off for a coffee. 20 minutes later, again we return to our bikes. By now she is red in the face, angry. She starts screaming in our faces about how she could just run over our bikes. My friend is only 5'5" and started talking to her calmly. "That would be a mistake. If anything happens to our bikes, we would know it was you. You've already got 2 tickets. She cut him off. She rang the police, claiming that 2 big bikers were threatening her a lone female. The police arrived within minutes, and in numbers. They separated us, heard our version of events. The truth, the police believed us. One of the police officers spoke to us by loud enough for her to hear. "You lads have had some stress. I don't want either of you riding your bikes. Go for a walk, grab a coffee." Meanwhile, another police officer is giving her a ticket. 40 minutes later, we returned to our bikes just in time to see traffic warden #2 issuing another ticket. No idea where she was. Only went to town to buy some paint. Meant to be only 5 minutes. She ended up with 4 fixed penalty tickets. The next one is a petty revenge story. She has been poking around for years. She lives across the street. She takes my mail, fruit from my trees, things from my yard. I've caught her multiple times, but she seems to think she has every right. Never enough for me to take legal actions. TBH, I'm busy as hell these days. One day she was by my mailbox with her dog in her pajamas, reading a letter from my bank regarding my small car loan. Just standing there, reading, glasses on, cigarette in hand, reading it. I confronted her and said opening people's mail is a crime. "Not like you have the money to fight it, ha ha ha." I thought, fine, you want to read someone's mail? I'll give you enough of your own to read. There's a religious organization nearby. Not sure if they're a cult or a legit organized religion. They leave notes and knock on doors, that type of thing. I'm always kind enough to them, so I get their propaganda in the mailbox every now and again. I used a VPN to go to their website. They had some type of questionnaire application thing. I used a fake email address, fake name, but her address. It also wanted a phone number. Her dog comes and craps on my lawn every evening. One night, I saw him out there, gave him an unsuspecting pat, and took a photo of the tag on his collar. Scurried back home and redid the application with her address and phone number. I see them come by 4 times a week to her house now, random times. Sometimes 7 a.m., sometimes 8 p.m., most weekends, knocking, leaving massive packs of papers and crap in her mailbox on her porch. I just know they're most likely calling her constantly, too. There you go, nosy neighbor. Lots of important scripture to read and keep you busy. Enjoy. The next one is a malicious compliance story. About 10 or so years ago, I went to a concert an hour away from me in Indianapolis. Decided to make a day of it, going to several museums and spots around the city. Each time paying for parking in a garage for 2 or so hours, then going to meander around the area. Finally, I go park close to the venue and paid for parking until the time it was free. Total, I probably paid $50 for parking throughout the day. Enjoyed the concert, but come back to a parking ticket on my car. I think, this is odd, but I am tired and chalk it up to a mistake. But I decide to take photos of my parking spot. Both spots on either side were taken, and all the signage, and head home for the evening, figuring I would sort it in the morning. The next morning, I review the ticket, the photo of my spot, and my parking receipt. The ticket did not line up to the spot my car was located in, and my receipt shows that I had valid parking at the time of the ticket. So I submit an appeal, thinking this will be easy. It's obvious that a mistake was made. The appeal was denied. The ticket was for the spot that was not paid for, ergo it stood. I called the office and the lady said they did not make a mistake as my receipt showed that I paid for spot X1 and the ticket was for spot X. I asked about the photo proof that my car was in spot X1. She said, well, you could have moved the car. Note that the parking receipt included my license plate number and everything. Think Park Mobile-like system. I noted that there were cars in spots on either side of me and that the entire street was full because of the concert. And honestly, I don't think they bothered to look at the photo. Even had that not been the case, I had proof that that license plate had a paid parking spot. No matter what, no dice. I am feeling petty over this $25 parking ticket at this point. So I called Visa and asked if I could retract the amount I paid for the time that I had parked since it didn't count. I submitted all the evidence and documentation to Visa. Visa, in what was the greatest thing Visa has ever done, IMO, they agreed that if my parking receipt and transaction number wasn't proof I had paid for parking, then clearly I had paid for a service I did not receive. And they extended my initial request of canceling the one transaction to include all the parking spots I had paid for through the system that day, valued at more than the parking ticket. Then they filed a formal complaint on my behalf with a letter explaining why they were refunding me. I would not have been nearly as satisfying if I had not spent the entire day playing tourist in the city and racking up a large parking bill all with the same vendor. The next one is an entitled People Story. This morning I was out mowing my lawn. I happened to be wearing a ratty t-shirt that had a logo from a video game that I enjoy playing. We live in a very small town in northern Wisconsin. Everyone just kind of minds their own business, so we have never had much interaction with any of our neighbors, which is fine with us. One of the houses that is next to ours is a rental property that the owners converted into a duplex. The bottom half is empty, and there are two adults, M and F, that live in the upper unit with two kids. I have never spoken to the parents as they have never made an attempt to even give the neighbor wave when we see the adults outside. However, this morning, the mom starts walking over towards me, so I stop the lawnmower and say good morning. She comments about how we have such a big house. I tell her it is because we like having lots of pets, 4 cats and 2 dogs, and that we usually adopt the animals that have medical issues since I am a nurse and my niece is a vet. We make a little more chit-chat and go about finishing mowing the lawn. I go inside to do some other chores and I hear a knock on the door. I check the cameras, and there are 2 kids standing at my door. I make it a policy that I do not interact with children that do not have a parent with them, especially because I am a gay man and with the current political state, to me, it is better safe than sorry. So I ignore the knocks and continue with my chores. A few minutes go by and the woman I spoke to earlier in the yard is standing there, so I open the door. She's upset that I ignored her children when they came over as they wanted to play with our pets. I told her that I would never allow children in my house that did not have a parent with them, and that our pets were not play toys for her children. So then she asked if they could play video games since I must be a gamer because of the shirt I had on. I reiterated that I would never allow children who do not have an adult with them in our home. She then starts going on about she needs some alone time because her boyfriend left her and she is the only one on the lease because he has bad credit and she cannot afford her rent, and she just needs some time to herself. I apologize that she is having a rough time, but that my husband and I would not be willing to entertain her children for her. She looked perplexed for a bit, and I was curious as to what confused her, and then she said something that made me lose it in a major way. She said, "Gross, why do fags have to be my neighbors?" I replied, "Look here, you nasty cunt, you will never say that to me or my husband again. You need to leave right now." And I slammed the door in her face. She kept pounding on our door, screaming all kinds of slurs and obscenities. Because we have had some issues with kids destroying property, we have cameras all over the outside of our house. So I turned on the alarm on all of them. She got the message then and left. Like WT actual F. I have never been so glad to have cameras everywhere outside. The next one is an entitled parent story. I, 32F, was in a major car accident in January of 2021. Ironically, I had been taking my boyfriend, 36M, to the ER because he had bleeding ulcers and ended up getting admitted to the hospital that night. This was still when they were enforcing COVID rules, so I was booted out of the hospital at about 0300 in the morning. When I left, it was snowing, and not thinking hopped on the freeway, which wasn't a good idea. I had been driving a lifted Jeep Cherokee with mud terrain tires, not the best ever for snowstorm driving. Getting off the freeway to go home, my brakes locked up and I went into a light pole head first at about 60 miles per hour. My Jeep did not have airbags. That was dumb. Needless to say, my car was totaled and I had to be extracted from the car by the fire department. This whole time I had been blacking out and losing consciousness, and I still get random flashes of I don't have all my memories from that night or several months after the accident. I got sent to the nearest trauma center, which was the same hospital I had just left. The nurses felt pretty bad about kicking me out. I ended up with a moderate to severe TBI, broken under my left eye, hairline fractures on my skull on the left side, bruising behind my ears, and black eyes. I had also cut open the inside of my mouth, had multiple lacerations all over my face. I broke my driver's side window with my face. Broke and bruised some ribs, had hairline fractures in my spine, broke my right wrist, my right knee, and my left foot, which required 2 surgeries, and I still need approximately 3 more. Needless to say, I was not doing great. I had recently gotten divorced the previous year, and think that my entitled parents decided that my accident was my boyfriend's fault. I had to stay in the hospital for a total of 12 days, in which case the mild family drama exploded into a severe family inferno. As I got closer to being released, all I had wanted to do was go home to my boyfriend and our kids. He had 2 previously, and I had 1. My entitled mother decided that wasn't what she wanted. On the phone, we sound almost identical. The whole time that I was in the hospital, she had been getting on the phone and impersonating me to my apartment complex management, even going as far as calling the cops to get my boyfriend and his 2 kids removed from my apartment. They were not on my lease yet. My entitled mom also forged my signature on hospital paperwork and made up a story about how my boyfriend was abusive to me, and got him banned from seeing me at the hospital. Again, forging my signature and writing a letter stating I didn't want to see him. This whole time, I was still suffering from the effects of my TBI and was delirious from the combination of pain medications and brain fog from my head injury. Entitled mom even had the locks changed on my apartment without my consent. When I finally was released from the hospital, I was in a wheelchair because of my broken foot that had just had 2 plates and 10 screws surgically put in to hold it together, and an ankle-to-hip brace on my other leg from my knee being broken. I requested to go home to my apartment, but again entitled mom played it that I couldn't go home because I had a 2nd-story apartment and couldn't take care of myself. So I got sent to stay at my parents' house against my will, an hour away from home because entitled mom wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to let my boyfriend come back to my apartment. I spent almost a whole miserable month there. Entitled mom refused to take me home even after I got crutches and was able to bear some weight. Initially, they refused to even go get my crutches from town because they didn't want me to have more mobility. Eventually, it got to the point where I had a friend come and pick me up from EM's house so I could go home because they kept refusing to let me go. As I gained clarity in my mind and was taken off the intense pain medication, I was able to start rectifying the situations that entitled mom made a huge mess of in my life, but I'm still trying to recover in some areas. I didn't find out until much later when medical bills started coming in that entitled mom had called my boyfriend's health insurance company, impersonating me, and had me removed from his insurance. It took months of calling and badgering and footwork on my part to get the situation figured out, and have the insurance pay for what they were supposed to pay for. It almost caused me to go bankrupt. At the same time, entitled mom signed me up for minimal health insurance coverage through the state that I had no idea I was enrolled in until I got a bill later stating that I back owed fees. Needless to say, I eventually completely cut both entitled mom and my father out of life after finding out how much they tried to control and how much they messed my life up. I ended up getting protection orders after they tried to break into my house, stalked me, and sent family and friends over to harass me. This whole incident was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was quite a bit of retaliation on their side that threw my life into a total tailspin ever since, but I'm sticking to my guns and not backing down. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow. And